So what I thought I'd do is I'd take you through my process for checking valve clearances and maybe pulling a cam as an example to check the chrome plating on the surfaces of those rockers, so you can get a sense for whether or not you want to tackle this on your own. I had to because I don't have a Ducati dealer anywhere near me. I'm in Arkansas, so there's not just a lot of options for me, so had to do it. There's some phenomenal resources out on YouTube as well as on the internet that I will reference in the description. And then I think hopefully from this video, those other resources that are available, it'll be a comprehensive guide. So if you are considering doing this for the first time, you can then have something that will really help guide you and give you the insight that you need in order to accomplish this task. So with that being said, this bike is, like I said, in 2001 earlier. The problem with the flaky rockers was supposed to be, I think, from 97 through 2000, but I did have one flaky rocker on the last valve clearance check that I did, and got the rocker from EMSDuc, and that was a very smooth process. I would tell you that EMSDuc has since sold his business, and LT Snyder of Desmo.MS has bought that business. So the service is the same. My understanding is the manufacturer process or remanufacture process for those rockers is the same as what Mike at EMSDuc had. And so really all that is to say is we should be okay even with the change. And Desmo.MS or LT Snyder runs some of the, he's one of the most authoritative figures here in the States when it comes to both 2-valve and 4-valve Ducatis before you get into the really the Panigale series. So consider it anything that's got belts for timing. He's the guy to check in with. Brad the Bike Boy would also be another great one. All right, probably will time lapse this in order to just pull the fairings because they're so easy to do. It takes just a couple of minutes, but there's no sense in watching this in slow-mo, so to speak. Okay, so fairings are off and the air box is off. The blinkers and air runners are obviously off. Everything kind of fits in a nice little stack here. So next step is to remove things like the spark plugs and the throttle body assembly. One quick note that I wanted to say was that this is once I get these off obviously, but this will be a really good time to clean up the throttle body assembly with some cleaner, it's just good maintenance practice. It'll help it idle just that much better. So as you pull things off, see if you can't go ahead and clean things up. It does take a little bit longer, but that's one of the benefits of being able to do this yourself. If you were to take this to a dealer, I doubt that they would, clean some of this varnish and whatnot off that gets caught in the throttle body throats. So, clean it up as you go, and then it's done right the first time. I want to take a moment just to kind of point out a couple of things. So this is a good opportunity as you're taking off the battery box and disconnecting the relays and the rectifier regulator down below through these two wiring clips, just to make sure that things are not burning up. So these wiring harnesses are dirty, there's some dirt there. But what you're looking for is to make sure that there are no burn marks, especially around here at this plug. So this one, definitely dirty. Looks like it's had a little heat there because it does look like it's got little burn marks. You can tell there's a little discoloration right there. So something I'm gonna clean up. But I don't think that's giving me any real cause for concern at the moment. Put some dielectric grease on it as I reassemble it, and then things should be okay. Same thing with this one. This one doesn't normally get the heat that the one with the 3 yellow wires does. But just a point to say that as you're pulling this off, this is a point that you want to make sure you take a look at, just to make sure that you're not overlooking something that could cause you a serious problem down the road. This one looks like it should be okay for me though, especially after I clean up the female ends there. Oil pressure sensor off here. Make sure I can get this camera right there. Oil pressure sensor off. Otherwise, just can't get that bolt cover, or I'm sorry, belt cover off. So anyway, comes off real quick if you undo that sensor right there. Okay, top dead center on the horizontal cylinder. So you've got a timing mark here on the cam pulley. That lines up with that little dot right there. Similarly, there is a mark here, which is difficult to see, lining up with the other side. And then you have a cam mark there, lining up with that. And then a cam mark here, lining up with that. Then, to take you around, there is a mark that disc rotates with that little point, which is stationary. That first little mark there tells you you're at top dead center horizontal cylinder. And so we are good to mark the belts. Now, these belts have like 5,000 miles on them. They're still in good shape. I put them on. They're not all that old. And I've been very pleased with them. Now, you're supposed to change belt every 12,000 miles. So I'm actually okay with these, given that they have 5,000 miles. In fact, here's one of the marks that I made when I changed out or put these belts on originally. So I have borrowed some of my daughter's nail polish, and we'll mark these belts top and top, and then also down here, I almost forgot to show you. Here, where you can see there's the mark in the case. If I can get my finger in there, hold the wires, goodness. Mark in the case right there, and then there's the pulley mark right there. So engine is correct. So I'm going to go through and mark both belts where I can reinstall them in the exact same position, where we have then the right amount of teeth. We're not mistimed, if you will, and then things should work beautifully once we reassemble this thing. Okay, for timing, I have the belts marked. Okay, so here's the mark there on the cam pulley itself. Here is a white nail polish mark there on the belt tooth. Same one here. Got two corresponding marks there, and then on the other side. And then here on the drive pulley, what I've done is I have a mark there that you can sort of see if we can actually get the thing in focus. There we are. So you got the little yellow pulley marker, and then my white nail polish right there. But then, because I can't mark the back belt, what I've elected to do, which was an idea that the fine gentleman from England gave us, and that is to count up a number of teeth and mark the inside belt there. And then I put a corresponding mark here on the outside belt in order to make sure that everything is aligned appropriately. So I'm going to give that nail polish just a moment to dry so that it doesn't become a mess as I pull things off the bike here, and then we'll continue on. Now that you have your belts off, to check that you have any resistance whatsoever on your idler pulleys and your tensioner pulley. You just kind of want to make sure that everything is good there, because if there's any grinding, that's a bad sign, and those pulleys would then need to be replaced. So good time to check that. Give them a good clean, because they do get dusty and whatnot. Your belt runs on it. They're very important to the overall life and health of your belt. Last thing I wanted to do is to quickly show you at least the way I do things. I try to do things when I place stuff, I try to place it in a logical order for me, right? So a lot of the times that is where I have the parts from the back to the front with orientation. Now, my garage isn't quite large enough to just spread the entire line of parts out, and my wife does enjoy parking in the garage. I do too, especially on a cold winter's day such as this. So I do have to kind of improvise and make sure that I, as I start a new row, for instance, it all sort of makes sense. But if you will keep your parts in line and in order, then reassembly becomes significantly more intuitive, more easy, and you don't have little bolts left over. So that's also a good thing. So for instance, I make sure I put all the little bolts back in the holes as I place things down while I work on the bike, and the belts there, which are still good. They're I mean, you can even see some writing on the back of the belt from the manufacturer. So they're in good shape. I'm going to use them again. They've got, I think, 7,000 miles left on them before Ducati would recommend replacing them. So yeah, they're in good shape. Kevlar lined a little bit. Anyway, going to continue pressing onward. So now the belts are off. The cams are free to spin, which is fine. So you saw I pulled this cam cover off. I'm going to pull this cam cover off. The other two cam covers. We're at top dead center on the horizontal cylinder. So I will do a clearance check on the horizontal cylinder first, and then I'll work at pulling the cams on the horizontal cylinder just to make sure that those rockers are okay. So pushing on. Also, one quick note is a downloadable form from EMSDuc.com. This is a great piece of paper here. It shows a form that he has created, and it very logically lays out the cylinder arrangement with the different intake or exhaust side, left side, right side, and then lays out for you where you put your measurements, and then you can quickly get to what size shim you need if you do require adjustment. So this is a free form that is on EMSDuc.com, and if I remember correctly, the file is titled four valve adjustment clearance calculations. It's right there as a hyperlink, takes you to a PDF form wherein then you can either save it or print it as I did. Okay, so I'm going to remove the valve cover on the exhaust side of the horizontal cylinder. A couple of notes, the first of which is it will be good to have something underneath to catch the oil drips, because there is oil in that cylinder, as you would expect. But when you pull the cap off, or the cover off, the valve cover, there's more than a drip or two that falls out. So just be prepared with a towel or something similar to catch some of those drips. Okay, so now it's time to take a look at checking the valve clearances. I'm going to look at maybe, I'll show how to do it on the vertical cylinder on the intake side. The process is exactly the same between intake and exhaust, as well as the upper or vertical and horizontal cylinder. Now, before I start this, I'm actually going to check the clearances on the horizontal side because I'm just going to do this in sequence. But the horizontal side is a little bit more difficult to film and show you exactly what's going on. I do have a whole bunch of good light, hopefully, here on the intake side of the vertical cylinder, so hopefully it's then a easier process to show. Okay, so here's the picture of the valve train, and I'm sure if you're watching this video, you've probably seen other videos as well about how the drivetrain actually works. But suffice to say, this is your opening shim, and you're measuring the clearance between this rocker arm and that shim for the opening clearance, because this is the arm that pushes down. Now, just beneath that, you can see the little two prongs of the closer shim. I can figure out where my pencil tip is, which is kind of right in this, right there. So one on this side, one on the other side. So this lifts the valve up, and this is the closing shim. This is the opening shim here. The closing shim has two little half rings that sit on the inside that keep it placed, and the valve, the rocker arm lifts up against that closing shim. So you have to take two measurements. They are both done here between the opening shim and the rocker. So the first is the opening measurement. Here's a little better picture now that I moved the cam out of the way. That would be brilliant. So you're measuring this clearance right there. That slides in beautifully. Much like dragging it in and out of a book. Just for the sake of, completeness here, let's try a 6. It just doesn't want to go. So 5 it is. All right, so we're going to come over here and write our clearance down. That was on the right hand side of the motor with the talking about the intake clearance. So intake clearance on the vertical cylinder, that will be vertical cylinder, intake clearance. We were on the right side. We haven't done the loaded clearance yet, but we did the opener clearance. That was 0.005, 5 thousandths of an inch. All right, now let's go get the loaded clearance, and that's the one that I think a lot of people get concerned about. Okay, trying to come up with a way to video this at the same time as actually do it. So for the loaded clearance measurement check, the cam is off the rocker, so there's no pressure applied to the rocker. And then you are measuring this gap here between the opening shim and the opening rocker, but you have to compress the closing rocker in order to get the what's called loaded gap between the opening shim and the closing rocker. So in order to do that, the method is to push down on one of these little ears, if you will, that extend beyond the closing shim. Now there are a couple of different ways to do that. A lot of people use a screwdriver. Some people use the like a socket on a little extension, which is the method I use. Some people have developed a special tool, which is very cool, that I don't even know where to get. So this method seems to work fairly well for me. So I'll show you kind of why I use this. The socket is certainly curved, or it has a circular type end to it, and I like that over and above using a screwdriver because it kind of sort of locks into place as you put pressure down, right? So I can push down, and it's a little less likely to fall off and hit the valve guide, which is at the very bottom of this. Now, I've used a screwdriver before to
you know, the screwdriver for me and the way I do things, it just slips off. And not to say that this is locked in place, but it is very much more secure for me than using a screwdriver. Now, for each set of valves, I will use the inside little leaf here and then measure the clearance. So I push down with a good deal of force, and then I can get the measurement. There we go. That feels like an 8, really does, or 0.00775 maybe. Call it an 8. Interestingly, if you put it in here and then you let go, it's really difficult to pull that thing out. So just as an understanding of what's going on here. Okay, so that gives you an idea as to how you can measure the closing clearance on your desmoquattro. Almost forgot to come over here and write down my loaded clearance. So that was 0.008 on the loaded side. Right side, rather. So my closer clearance is 0.003. And that just comes right off. Okay, so a little tool that you can fashion to pull these pins are using a 5/8 short socket, a long bolt that fits a 5mm, it's like a 5mm bolt rather, very small. It should thread in. A good sized washer and a wing nut. And then the idea is, bring this back a little bit, put this over here, thread that in. I had started this and thought, yeah, I should probably film this too. So thread that in a little bit so it holds. Take your wing nut, bring it to the base there, and now you can pull that pin. And it just pulls right out. Not a terribly fast process, but it is very effective. And then simply unscrew it. Easy to do by hand. You just need a few threads. It doesn't take a lot of force. And then you can see that the pin is being pulled out. So I still need to pull this out just a little bit further. So I'm going to save some video space here. Go ahead and pull this out as far as it needs to go, and then we'll undo this retaining bolt as well as the one underneath, and then pull this cam out. Okay, so now it's time to remove the cam. So what I did is I took out the 2 locking screws located here and here, okay? And then as earlier, right, we've got the pin pulled out, not all the way out, just about, ½ inch, maybe just a smidge more. Now what we'll be able to do is take the beginning, sorry, not the beginning, I apologize, but the opening rocker, we can push it out of the way. Okay. There we go. Now, once the opening rocker is out of the way on the cam side, we should be able to, you can see that the cam is spinning freely. We should be able to just bring this out, and we can rotate the cam as we need in order to remove it. See? Easy peasy. Okay, so now it's time to look at the surfaces of the rockers. So what you're looking for is a deflaking, if you will, of the chrome surface. Now some of it will be a little bit of burnishment, which I find is okay. For me, it's okay. Like that little bit right there on the top there, I think that's actually okay. I'm gonna run my fingernail over it, and if my fingernail catches, then it's time to replace that closer rocker. Same thing looks like here. This looks actually quite, focus. That looks okay. There may be a little spot there I need to check out. And then that side looks actually okay. So assuming that the spots on those two closer rockers are okay, then I'll move on to the next side, maybe the exhaust side, and do the exact same procedure. Okay, so the bottom cylinder is now adjusted. I've gone ahead and buttoned up the valve cover on the exhaust side. I'll go ahead and button up the valve cover on the intake side. Probably just going to recheck the clearance just for my own peace of mind. But then we'll start on the vertical cylinder on the adjustments that it needs and get it all set up. Then it'll be time for reinstallation of the belts, putting everything back together, and then testing up. Now, before I get to the vertical cylinder, the motor should be in top dead center on for the vertical cylinder. Right now it's set at the horizontal cylinder, and I don't have the motor turn tool, so what I do is I use the rear wheel in a high gear, turn the wheel backwards. Should be 270 degrees. There will be a timing mark on the other side of the engine where we'll be able to see when exactly the motor is lined up perfectly. I like, what's his name, Devil Dogs on YouTube, his idea of sticking a screwdriver in there and just kind of watching that screwdriver go down and up. It'll go up all the way and then it'll start to come back down. Then we go to the sight glass and then just kind of bump the wheel just ever so slightly in order to get the timing mark to line up, and that's when we know we're at top dead center. That'll be important when we do the closing shim, because we have to take the half rings off the closing shim. Show you that process. But once the half rings are off and the shim is off, then essentially that valve is free to fall into the cylinder itself. And that would be bad news if the piston is not at top dead center. Now, for my own peace of mind, just because I don't like things falling in there, even if it's going to hit the top of the cylinder, I'm probably going to put a zip tie around the valve stem anyway at the bottom. Again, just for peace of mind, just overdoing stuff. So that just is going to be the way I do it. So, with that, button up the horizontal cylinder here, get it all ready to go. And then we'll start on the vertical cylinder. Okay, so I'm going to take this screwdriver, put it in the top cylinder spark plug hole, and I'm going to rotate the back wheel backwards, and then watch as this Phillips comes up. And then we'll stop it about the time it gets to the top of its lift. About right there. Now Now I'm going to take you around to the sight glass and we'll look at the timing mark. So here's the mark, and we need to move that little mark right there, which looks like a little hair, so that it's in line. So what I intend to do is just bump, 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 just lightly bump. It's almost there. Okay, that is absolutely perfect. See if I get that light there. There we are. Now we know the top cylinder is top dead center. Okay, on the exhaust side, I have a opener that is at 0.007. That's actually in Ducati spec, but I think I'd like to take it down if I have the shim to do it. I have another that is 0.008. That's on the right side. So as you look at the bike, that's the 0.008 is that one there. That's outside Ducati's clearance range. So that definitely needs to be taken out and adjusted. And then I have the closer clearance that I measured on this right side at 1,000. So that's a little tight for my liking. I'd like it to be just maybe 1,000 more. So what I intend to do is I will go ahead and adjust the exhaust on the right hand side to make sure, obviously, the one that's out of Ducati spec gets in spec. Make sure I have the correct shim so that I can then, if I do, I can do the unloaded, the opener shim on the other side and get it drawn down a little bit. And then I'm going to remeasure. That means I'm going to put the cam back in there, remeasure just to make sure that I measured correctly with the closer. And the reason why I do that is, number one, I don't work on these every day, and this particular cylinder has the suspension linkage all in the way, so getting good leverage on the closer sometimes is a little difficult, and sometimes it's just better to measure once, cut twice, that adage. So I will measure once again, and then this particular one on the intake side, it's actually okay. So it's ready to be buttoned up. Put the cam in there, drive the pin home, go ahead and seal the cover back on. It's ready to go. So I think actually I'll go ahead and do the buttoning up of the this cam and cover and stuff like that. Now just go ahead and put it on time lapse. Then we'll come back to this side and get it all adjusted as best I have parts. Okay, so this one here had a clearance of 0.008. Let's just verify that with my clearance sheet. And this is the vertical cylinder, it's the right side. So yep, unloaded clearance 008. So it was definitely pretty loose. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure it and then see where it needs to go. Hopefully I can get it close to 0.004. Comes right out. Okay, take our multimeter here, pull this off the magnet, turn the meter on, make sure it goes to 0. Set that to 0, make sure it's set, and let's open it up. Set the valve shim on top, screw it in so it just touches. Okay, so it's showing a 2.889. Really, I mean, they could be 2.90, just based on how gently I have the pressure of the shaft against the base. So call that 2.9, and I have 0.8, and I want to go tighter. So I need to go larger on the shim size in order to reduce the clearance between the rocker arm and the shim. So if I have 2.9 now, let's convert, which I'll need my iPhone in order to do this, millimeters into or thousandths into millimeters, so I can get the correct difference. So what's 0.004 represent? All right, so I'll be right back with that answer. Okay, I'm back, and in order to go 0.004, that's 0.1 millimeters. So if I was at a 0.29, I need to go to a 3.0. So looks like I can do that. So this is my 3.0 here. And just for grins, and because we have it out, we're going to measure that out just to validate. So this is a 2.9. We'll put that in the 2.9 box. And then we'll put this in. Turn it on. Okay, so let's measure this guy out and see if we're 3.0. Yep. 3.0. Okay. And it looks like I'll have one of those left, depending on what the size of the other opener is. All right, so this then will go on the top of that. Oopsie. Okay. So that should be the opener clearance on the right side, and then I want to go ahead and check the clearance on the left side, because it was a little, I mean, it was in spec, but already this far into it, I have shims available. I mean, why not, right? So we can just lift, of course, there's no light there. If I do that, we can just lift this one out of the way and take the top shim off. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Lift this up. And now we'll go through the same process to measure this out. Let's see what it is. Just put the camera here. Okay. Open this up. Stick the valve shim on. Let's see what we got here. So also a 2.9. It says 291, but thinking a little bit of the oil might be compressing enough to give it that variance there. So this is 2.9, so this will go into the 2.9 bucket of my EMS shim thing. I'm getting quite the collection of 2.90 millimeter shims here. And then I'll look at a 2.95. I'll use the one of these that I pulled off earlier. I'll just validate quickly that it is 2.95. Should be. But maybe I had a brain lapse there and misplaced my shim. It's 2.95. Okay. So I should be able to put this onto that valve stem, and we will tighten up the clearance just a wee bit. Let's turn this off. Tighten up the valve clearance just a wee bit, put it further into spec, so we'll work on that now. Oops, I guess I ought to bring my camera up. That would be awesome. Bring that up. Set that down. Make sure it's fully seated in there. This one's fully seated in there. Okay. Now I'm going to reinstall the cam and then remeasure the clearance. I'm going to remeasure both opener and closer clearance just to make sure that I've read correctly the first time around. It doesn't hurt to remeasure, right? So now it's time to check the loaded clearance, and it dawned on me I got distracted, got a cup of coffee, and came out here, did the 5/1000ths measurement, which goes in. So you know the 5/1000ths goes in. I'm going to try a 6, which would conceptually be 2/1000ths clearance when I subtract the loaded clearance from the unloaded clearance if this 6 goes in, right? So currently still sitting at 1, now that we've adjusted the unloaded clearance from 0.008, which is what it was originally, down to 0.004. So if 5 goes in, that was expected. Does a 6 go in? The 5 felt a little snug, honestly. But again, it's somewhat difficult to get a good and proper grip on this little closer, which makes it difficult. Okay, a 6 just doesn't want to go. It's like I can feel just a smidge of movement there, which would be the 1,000 that I'm getting. So what I need to do now is, if I want to take that measurement from 1,000s to 2,000s, I need to go up. So I have a zip tie on. I also need to snug it up. So just kind of make sure it's fairly snug. Now, additionally, we know that, or I know that. Anyway, we know that the piston is in top dead center, right? Because we validated that the motor is, in fact, I can see the piston. I mean, it's right there. So the zip tie should be just peace of mind. It should not necessarily be the primary method of keeping the valve up. I just really kind of want to see if I can. Everything I read says that if the piston's at top dead center, we should be okay to pull the valve shim right off, even if it falls into the cylinder. It only falls a little way. It doesn't fall into the cylinder. So, that said, if I pull this lever back, see if I can do this one and keep it visible. That would be nice, huh? If I pull this lever back, that falls, right? So that falls, but if I take, let me grab another screwdriver, see if I can come at it from here. Nope. So if I take this and bring it back, I should be able to do that. So I pulled the rocker back, and then I should be able to take this and move it down, just like so. Then, once I've got this, I should be able to take a set of, or a magnet, and pull those half rings right out. Sorry. The reason I didn't do that is, at that point, is I didn't have it just really handy. So I've got my magnet that's magnetizing everything. Oh goodness. There we are. Set that where it's easily retrieved. So I'll go back to here, and then back to here. Looks like I don't need to, there's, wedge it down, okay. Now, with the arm off, I should be able to Pull half rings off. One. This is hard to do with one hand. Keep scrolling out. And then two. Should be able to take this and pull it off. And then release the pressure. And the valve stayed. Yay! Okay, so I've got my half rings and I've got my valve shim, which fell over here. Now, one of the cool things about the EMS valve shim kit is that it includes a closure measuring tool, which I've never had to use before, but we're going to find out how to use it now. So give me just a second and I'll get my stuff set up here. Okay, so this is the closure shim measurement tool. This is the closure shim that came out of the valve. And so the way you would use this is supposed to be 10 millimeters long, and according to EMSDuc, right? So you put that in just like so. And then I'm going to do this two ways. One, the way that the website, I guess, shows you how to do it is, you know, you start out with a dial gauge zeroed out, and then take that. That is showing 5.1, say 5.113, and then I need to convert that over into millimeters, which was 3. I got 5.14 last time, so 5.013. Anyway, it comes out to 3.05. And then what I wanted to do was take a look at this tool, which I trust a little bit more. The problem with using that micrometer is that you can't use the center because it's divoted for the valve stem to go through, and that's not supposed to be part of the 10 millimeter difference. So what I did is I took a look at just using just the corners here. Let me see if I can do it maybe this way so you can see the readout. Okay, so at the base of the shim, all the way to the side, I'll screw this in. I get the same reading. So that's 13.05. You take 10 mil off that, and then you've got the 3.05 millimeter clearance. So I need to go, if this is 13.5, and I want to add just a smidge more clearance, then I'm going to go to a 3.0, which would be a measurement of 13. So I've got to put these little measurement tools down here carefully so as not to screw up bits of calibration. So this is a 3.00 tool. Put that together. Right there on the edge. Okay, we are at 13, so that should be 3, subtracting the 10, that's going to be 3, just like Mike at EMSDuc said. Turn that off. We'll need to stick the valve, the closer shim on, then reinstall the half rings, and then we can then remeasure with the cam installed just to make sure that we're all hunky-dory where we want to be. So, the valve shim goes this way. Oh, my watch isn't really taken. There we go. Now once I pull this down, I should be able to push that down further so I can get access to the half ring. So I need to go get the half rings, which I put in one of these empty kit things, and then the way at least I think I'm going to do it is I'm going to put just a smidge of grease on the half rings and then reinstall them so they stick. So given that there's limited clearance over here, obviously, you know, use this area over here as best as possible. Okay, so I got them in. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to film it because I hit the camera and it knocked over, and I did not want to drop that little half ring into the valve area, which certainly would not have been the end of the world. I could have fished it out with a magnet or whatnot, but I was trying to be very careful. So just to kind of show here, I'm going to bring this out a little bit, pull that down. You can see that the original half rings are in there. Okay, and having a little bit of grease on the half ring helps it dramatically, just kind of to stick into that little recess that is on the valve itself. Now what I need to do is add the opening shim that I put over there in a safe space, and then we will add the cam and then recheck the clearance. This should be better, and that's about as good as I can get it at the moment. So just to recheck the unloaded clearance, the 4 should slide in there really nice. So there's the 4 right side. 4 slides in there beautifully, just a little bit of drag. Okay, so the trick here is that you got to apply a good deal of pressure with the closer rocker arm in order to actually create the clearance you need at the shim to measure the clearance, right? So if I put this here, which is on the little lip of that closer rocker, and then carefully place this. This is a 6,000, so we're not going in at all with unloaded clearance. Get this placed correctly. And if I push down hard, it goes in with just the right amount of drag. Just right. 6,000. So 6 minus the 4 is 2, which is actually precisely where I wanted to be. Now, I would expect that that clearance may open up because the half rings may adjust just a bit. I've tried to snap or I have actually snapped the closer rocker a couple of times. Here's a 7 thousandths. I don't think this is going to fit, but we're going to try it anyway. So apply some pressure. It fits, but there's a lot of drag. So maybe that's 2.5 thousandths. Maybe. I still think it's a 2, which is really just perfect for my purposes. So, that is now adjusted and looks good. Double checked all the clearances. As you saw with the time lapse, belts are on in both the vertical cylinder as well as the horizontal cylinder. I've rotated the engine. I don't feel any kind of binding whatsoever, which is awesome. And I think this is now ready to go back together. I do think I'll turn this a couple of more times. I don't know if I mentioned that just a moment ago, but I do believe I'll turn this a couple more times before torquing up the bolts and setting the tension. This is obviously way too loose. That's actually tightish. But anyway, setting the tension as it should be. So I'll spin it a couple more times, then I'll tighten up the belt. I use the 5mm method, so I should be able to slide a 5mm Allen wrench underneath the cover when I put the cover back on here, and that has never failed me at all. I can also do it by the Hertz method, get it to 110 Hertz, but because of the microphone placement, it's a little hard to read. Anyway, onward.